Hi guys, it's Lori. So we all have a story, right? We all have a past. We all have been through situations, events, tragedies, celebrations, successes and failures. And by the way, there are no failures. The only failure is giving up. We all have soul wounds. And what happens is we have a story. We all have a story. And each of us, regardless of where you grew up, who your parents were, how many siblings you had, we all have a story, chapter by chapter by chapter. And what I've noticed is so many people that I work with are ashamed of their story. They're ashamed of their story. So rather than look at it for what it is, something in the past, it's in the past. It doesn't have the power to affect you unless you allow it to. Past, present, and future. The only thing that exists right now is the present. So our stories do affect us, though. They mold us, they create who we are today. I want to talk about the shame, what happens if you're ashamed of your story, and how that can hold you back spiritually, and how it can actually continue the cycle. So before I talk about that, that'll be in the next video. I'm kind of jumping ahead to repeating the cycle. So just know that if you have not taken the time to heal, many of us will either create a facade, not write a new story, create a facade, not talk about their story. Not many people know where they come from, what happened, or deny it completely. And I'm not talking about rewriting a story to, create a healthier individual. I'm talking about pure out, simple denial or stuffing. No, I don't need to deal with that. It's over, whatever. And what happens when you do that is the cycle continues. And children get hurt through this, okay? So, do you know for each negative vibe, each negative word, or each negative act that a child endures, there has to be at least 5 positives to counteract that? And even so, does it truly counteract it? Think about this. If somebody that you admire, think about it. When a child is born, this helpless infant, mommy or daddy, or mommy and daddy, or whoever the caregiver may be, is their God, truly, because that person they're dependent on for everything. Right? Even in utero, children are hearing what we're saying. They're feeling your emotions. So studies have proven that while the baby's in utero, if mom is panicked or having a really difficult time in her life, or depressed, or lacks self-confidence, or involved in an abusive relationship, if dad is constantly on mom, yelling, whatever, if dad is giving some hardship, or whoever's around mom or her parents, whatever, it affects the child. It can affect physical growth, but it definitely affects mental, emotional health, spiritual health. We are the first representation of God on this physical plane to that child. So you're not only affecting them emotionally, mentally, you're affecting them spiritually, whether they know it or not. It doesn't matter if you're a religious person, a spiritual person, if you're an atheist, whatever. It doesn't matter. We all have an innate longing, desire to know the Lord, right from, right from conception. So, what an abusive, not even abusive, but negative, insecure parent produces is a distrust, or inability to have faith, or a non-belief in God. Okay? Or we'll see God as unavailable emotionally, superior, and he is superior, but I mean untouchable, kind of stuff like that. So, I mean, we're talking right from conception, okay? And I'm not saying this so any of us will beat ourselves up. Again, the past is the past. But it's so important to be honest, be authentic, be a parent. So we are given these children as gifts, whether you're a parent, a grandparent, a caregiver. If you're in a bad mood, that child's picking up on the energy. And I'm not saying, they also pick up on the energy if you pretend that everything's fine when it's not. That was something I did when my kids were little. I always tried to pretend that everything was fine when it's not. Well, let me tell you something, you're not fooling your children. Your children know, okay? So when you're faking it like that, you're creating a distrust because they can't trust what they're seeing, but they can sense your insecurity, okay? How about, even a tiny, tiny, tiny baby, a week old, 2 weeks old, a day old, whatever, can not only sense, what you're feeling, they can sense if they're wanted or not. They can sense if they're loved. They can sense if, I've heard people say to children, well, your dad is a loser, or your mother is no good, or too bad you have parents like that. So what the kid says if you say, oh, too bad your parents are like that, the kid takes it on themselves. Kids are, and up until, I think it's like 6 years old, and they grow, in between that stage, but they're very much, especially up until age 2, I think, or 3 is when they like really learn to share and stuff like that. I mean, at 2 we're teaching them, but at 3 they understand that they should, Before that, their world is completely self-centered. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean it's all about them. They're learning things. Everything's about them. So if you say to a child, even if they can't speak yet, they understand what you're saying. You could say it to them in Russian, in German, if they're in the United States. They'll still get the gist of it. It'll go in their subconscious mind. So if you're telling them that they're bad, you're telling them that their parents are bad, you're telling them whatever, that's negative. I can't do this. You're a pain in the butt. I'm tired. Your mother, blah, blah, blah. Your father, blah, blah, blah. Or I can't handle this. I didn't want you anyway. And you may not be saying this directly to the child. You could be saying this to the other partner, your friends, whatever. Just because a baby cannot react to it doesn't mean that they don't hear it, feel it, know it, and believe it. Because whatever their caregiver says to them, they believe. The faith of a child. Jesus says to come to him with the faith of a child. Well, what's the faith of a child? They believe what you tell them. They don't start questioning you until they get a little older. They believe what you tell them. So if you tell them you're never going to amount to anything, too bad you've got the parents you do. You're so cute. Too bad your parents are, blah, blah, blah. And in this day and age of so many mental disorders, so many addictions, so many things like that, children are being raised by different people. And sometimes the parents are doing the best they can and they just can't do it. Sometimes the parents are not doing the best they can and they just don't care. Whatever the case may be, I mean, that's as old as history, right? But today it's rampant, right, with everything going on. Just because somebody is blood related to this child doesn't mean that they're the best person for the child, Just remember that. You are creating a story for this child, okay? So when we start talking about our own stories, and how it affects us, and soul wounds, and how, when we look upon situations, because that's what we're going to do in our next group or through a series of videos. When we're looking at ourselves and doing all this healing work to grow spiritually, if you have small children in your life, remember you are helping to create their story. So you could be making their story one of hope and one of safety and security. If a child feels insecure, And that doesn't necessarily mean like financially. It could be, mom and dad are fighting all the time, or, family members are fighting all the time, or they're with a caregiver constantly and suddenly ripped away. The child doesn't get it, okay? All they get is, I must have done something wrong. That person doesn't love me anymore. Why don't I see that person anymore? Sometimes they have to deal with death at a young age. They will, like I said, especially the very, very young ones, will immediately put that upon themselves. What did I do that made grandpa go away? What did I do that made daddy go away? What did I do that made mommy so upset? You know, so, but they can also sense lies, which creates insecurity. So, say, you're really upset about something and you're telling them, no, 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 everything's going to be okay, but they know you're lying. I'm not saying to put adult stuff on children, especially 1 and 2 year olds, but as they grow, same thing applies. We hold on to negative impressions and we can even make them grow. Like an adult might be joking with you and say, geez, you're ugly. And that child at 5, 6, 7, 10, 12 years old remembers that not as a joke, but I'm ugly. I'm not good enough. Even my whatever doesn't love me. Children need love. It's a proven scientific fact. You can do, everything that they need, meet all of their needs, but without love, they will not thrive. They need to be loved and nurtured and secure. Security is a big deal because, like with my kids, honest to God, when I got divorced, I was a wreck. And we had financial issues, all of that. And I could tell you the whole story, but it would take too long of a video. But one thing that my children will tell you this today, we've talked about it, regardless of the situation, whatever was going on, and I'm not saying I was perfect. I made mistakes. I tried to put on that facade a lot. And I truly believe it's better to be authentic, but only at their level, only as much as they can understand. You don't want to dump on a 10-year-old about how finances are out of control or how, mommy's out there with some other guy or, you know what I mean? You can't dump that on a child. You don't have to tell them personal stuff. But you can tell them, I'm a little concerned right now about something grown up, but it's all going to be okay. I'm working on taking care of it now. But if I seem a little like if they say, why are you upset? I'm a little worried about grown up stuff, but it's going to be okay. You're good. You're all set. Nothing's going to go wrong, life happens. Life's not perfect, but they should not hear negatives. And they shouldn't hear negatives about people they love. If a child loves someone, they love someone. They don't need to hear about the mistakes that person's made. They don't need to hear your judgment call on that person. Keep that to yourself in front of the kids. And I'm not even talking just about their parents. It could be about their friends' parents. It could be about their teacher. It could be about another family member. Keep it to yourself. They don't need to hear negatives. If it's an unsafe person, you could say, you don't want them around that person, but you don't have to be shouting out insults and that kind of thing. To me, that is abuse because I see what happens with people's stories and soul wounds. I grew up with a mentally ill mother, and I know as an adult that many, if not all of the negative things that she did and said were probably due to her illness. That doesn't matter to a child. When I was a little child, I didn't say, oh yeah, mommy's sick. That's why she said that to me. That's why she did that to my sister. No, I didn't know if she hated us. It's an uncertainty. So you're developing a future adult. Just remember that. And God's children. So, they don't belong to us. They're given to us as a gift for a certain amount of time to mold them, to shape them, and to teach them the way. Not to control them. They're not our little puppets. They're not our toys. We're to shape them into who they are meant to be, not in who we want them to be. It's not about control. If you try to control your children, they're going to rebel against you. A lot of times we do that out of love. I'm not, and again, whatever happened in the past is in the past, okay? I'm not saying this, if you're my age, your kids are probably grown. But I'm just saying, every day is a new day. If you have little ones around you, keep this stuff in mind. If you have grown children, and, when you're doing your own inventory, you see where you may have maybe put a chapter in there or put the beginning of a soul wound in there. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, son or daughter, let's get together. Hey, I just want to tell you I'm sorry. I just want to tell you I'm sorry. There's many decisions our children are going to make, grown children, even teenagers, young children, that we may not necessarily agree with, or it may not be what we hope for. But as long as it's not leading them in the wrong direction, as adults, even if it is, we got to still kind of step back and let them make their own mistakes, which is really, really hard. But if you come off as a control freak, you will not, you will, you. I mean, that's simple communication one-on-one. Fair fighting rules say, first of all, you don't use people's vulnerabilities against them. No name calling. You can't try to change a person. Everything you do as a motivation of love, or you have no business doing it. Anyway, I got a little off track. What I wanted to talk about, like I said, is just how important our words are. Life and death are in the tongue. It says that in the Bible. God knows what he's talking about. With a simple word, it's one of the smallest body parts that we have, but one of the most powerful, not only for our own lives. We know that. If you're growing spiritually, you know that. You know to be careful with your words, because you're putting it out there, creating, your world, right? And the subconscious mind will just accept it. See, the subconscious mind doesn't question it. It just accepts it. Same thing, how a child is even more so susceptible. Their minds are like sponges. Their subconscious is like a sponge. They are just intake, downloading information all day long. Right from the time that baby's in there, the day you're pregnant. And dad too, even though dad's not carrying the baby, dad is a regular part in the nuclear family. Dad is a regular part of that baby's life. If it's non-traditional, if maybe it's grandma, maybe it's grandpa, maybe it's sister or brother, maybe it's best friend, you're a regular part of that child's life already. It's a heavy responsibility, but if you catch yourself, even if you're in a bad mood, we all mess up. I'm not saying beat the crap out of yourself. This is not about condemnation. This is just about self-awareness, Wouldn't it be nice if our children, grandchildren could grow up and not really have to rewrite their story? You don't want to go overboard on the other way, too. I've seen parents do that with it. All praise, continued praise, no matter what the kid does. Praise for nothing at all. Oh, geez, you walked in the room. You are the greatest. It's nothing wrong with saying you're awesome, you're great, you're good looking, but those are all things they really had nothing to do with. You're good looking. Which there's nothing wrong with saying that. But what I'm saying is, don't put them so far up on a pedestal that when they fall down with real life, like they can't handle it. Like everybody gets a trophy. I disagree with that. Everybody should be commended for playing. They don't need a trophy. We win and lose in life. You know what I mean? Or maybe everybody gets a trophy, but the winners get the trophy. I don't know. But I just feel like they should absolutely be commended and encouraged to be who they want to be. If you're really into baseball and your kid can't stand t-ball, he'd rather go play soccer. Guess what? It's soccer. We're molding human beings, our future generation. Anyhow, I have gone on way too long with this, and the next video I'm going to talk about our stories and what being ashamed of them can actually do to us. And if we want to grow, how to rewrite our stories and how to be who we are here to be authentically, confidently, with faith, belief, forgiveness, and gratitude. All right. I'll talk to you guys later. I hope you're having a great night.